One.
Hey all, thanks for coming out to the MMO Grind. I'm Malice, and the laughing guy over there is Zaylin. Tonight we're talking about subjects that's been brought to us several times, and we would like to kind of talk about something that everybody else has been interested in and confused about. What the fuck is alpha and beta testing? We've mentioned it a million times in this show. We've talked about it in different ways. And honestly, there's very different views and different ideas over time and whatnot with this exact subject matter. So we kind of want to delve into kind of the crunchy dev mechanics and the concepts of what this is. And when you as a customer can feel that a company is lying to you or giving you a bunch of bullshit or is being legit. And so I'm going to kind of there's no raw definition, but I'm going to give you the closest definition that I think fits best to what is alpha and beta testing. What do we got in the chat here? We got
Everybody's just
BowBow.
saying
Hey,
hello.
yep.
BowBow and Potts and Wolf. Hello, everybody. I know Narthesis is in there somewhere.
He's probably hiding. He likes to do that. So I'm going to start off right off the beginning with in-game development. A big chunk of the time, you don't want players involved. You are building an engine. You are scrapping together terrain. You are trying to make the world functional and stable. These all do not. These should. The word "should" here is be wholly 100% driven by in-house Q&A.
So does that mean that in-house you would have a lot of testers in there? Because obviously you want people crawling around doing all this stuff within your environment to see the bugs, see what works, what doesn't work. Do you have an in-house testing group for that?
Well, that's what should be happening. Unfortunately, what we're seeing here in the last, I would say, almost decade now, we're seeing this change. And this change is that really the price of a top-end game hasn't really changed in the last 20, 25 years. It's maybe gone from $59 to $69. That is a kind of an irrelevant amount of change in the market, considering the drastic difference in development costs that games have been going through. So, to not drive away the market share for players who want to be purchasing these products, they're cutting corners in other ways, mainly making you pay to do a job that they used to have people that actually they paid to do. And that means that while they still have usually QA people, they have like 3 QA people instead of like 30 QA people. And you have to look at it from the brass tacks, the financial side of things, which is that each of those people right out the box is going to cost you anywhere between $30,000 and $40,000 a year, plus healthcare, plus all the other things. Because the one thing that game studios do, they don't pay well, but they make up for it in huge benefit packages. So that's pretty standard in the industry right now.
So then why wouldn't most game studios utilize the community that has... I mean, nowadays, you look at the games that are coming out, and Kickstarter's a great example for this. The amount of people that are willing to spend money up front to get in and say, I believe in what you're doing and I want to be a part of that. Why wouldn't I, as a developer, go, hey, let's take an example from CU. I've got a mod squad. I want you to get in. I'm not paying you anything, but because you love this product so much, I want you to do this, and that's your thing. Why not take advantage of that?
Semi, because it's actually damaging the whole entire game industry. It's making it harder to get into the industry, and that a lot of tasks that you're getting done are not nearly as professional level as people that you're hiring, that you actually have, here is your very long, stringent list of things that this needs to accomplish. Break it, put it back together, break it, put it back together, give me a full data report on this. I mean, if you're taking, even people who have passion for it, they don't often know how to write a beta report or an alpha or a test report. And without a properly written test report, you can only make assumptions on what their problem is. And I feel that because of that, you end up with a lot of major issues that get skipped over because they're not properly documented.
Makes
so
sense.
you come out with a couple of your quality testers who are working on the basics. Now let's move into the land of the technical alpha. This is, especially for Kickstarter products, is kind of where people start stepping in. A technical alpha is really supposed to be a closed box. You're supposed to ramp up hiring and your quality control people. Your devs are walking all over the inside of it, constantly modifying things. They're finally putting up enough that should be, the servers are running every day. Should be up doing testing at least. It should be running at least 3-4 days at a time in a batch to make sure that the servers stay up, that the servers stay stable, that as you are in there tinkering with it, it's not crashing the game, all those types of things. Because as soon as you start doing major modifications, whether you're just dropping in objects for looks, or whether you are having NPCs and pathing, or all those types of things, you need to know that while those things are snap tighting and moving around and being changed in such drastic ways, that the server stability still hangs in there. Because as soon as you start slamming 5,000 players into it, they start slamming into every object, triggering every algorithm and code you have in that game. And that will bring it down if you have not paid attention to making sure your servers are stable.
So technical alpha is still technically an internal testing period. We're not at the alpha that most gamers kind of up into more or less this decade of gaming have understood of, hey, I got into alpha. This is not that alpha.
Right. Almost what CU calls like their IT people. If you're an IT rank, like you're an internal tester. You have a certain expectation of working hand in hand with a dev so a dev can use you as a bot almost. I mean, hey, let's smash your face in that.
You're a tool, Malice. Just give it up and just say you're a tool. It's okay.
All right. Nothing wrong with that. The fact that we pay for the privilege of being that tool is what I consider the weird thing now in the industry. You look at a game like Warhammer, or which is what I worked on. We had a large staff of quality people, and we worked hand in hand. Everything that came back that, we get a bug report, this quest isn't doing this. Okay. Quality would go out, they would test it, they would say, yep, it's not operating. They'd kick it back to dev would go through, we'd fix the product, then send it off to quality would go, hey, it works, or nope, it's, if I keep doing this, it still breaks the quest, or whatever.
So this is kind of a times are changing, the way that we're making games are changing, the Kickstarter game is becoming more and more and more the thing. Obviously that is changing how testing is done. You're trying to cut costs, all that. You've stated that. This is making a lesser quality game, you think, or just one with more errors and not necessarily the overall quality substance of the game is down?
Well, I feel Star Citizen and Camelot Train in specific, I believe that those games, we see what the outcome is. They're trying to put out a high quality game. They're not trying to streamline it out, but they're also trying to cut corners as far as cost, which makes sense. They're Yeah, I mean, Star Citizen not so much. They have a crap ton of money thrown in
All
their
they gotta do is
product.
make a new ship, and then they get more money. It's fine.
Right. Whereas Camelot Unchained, is still is using investors and things like that to constantly make sure that they can keep their product moving. Um, but at the end of the day, that's why they're both like 7 years in development, you know, because they're using their devs as everything. They're their quality team, they're their test team, they're their implementation team, they're their programmers, they're everything. And that is a direction that the game industry in general has gone, which is so like if you look in uh, about 2000 to like uh, 2012, we'll say, in about that range, game companies were filled with people who did a lot of specific tasks, a lot of bulk work tasks. Um, I mean, crap, what was my job? I went in and I built quests. I worked with a writer, implemented quests, made sure that they had visual manifestations of interest. We would go around and uh, beautify zones, make sure that there are NPCs roaming and animals about, and the place looks alive and interesting. We work with artists to place new terrain and new objects like buildings and all these types of things into the world. But we were not programmers. We didn't. We were script kiddies. They wrote us tools, and then we would go in and use those tools to implement these things. So they've kind of moved away from using like bulk manpower to make these games, and they're looking for people who are programmers, pay them all a little bit more, and then try to have them build the tools and all the other stuff themselves and be able to do all that work themselves. Unfortunately, like many situations, sometimes it's better to have more eyes on a problem, um, because more ideas can be figured out to create a resolution, or that they see through, because they're fresh eyes, they see what's broken or they see what's manifest in that problem more easily. Right now, I feel that they're stacking so many tasks on the individual to basically do everything in the aspect that they need new eyes constantly. And so obviously they do have teams and they can pull in team members, but they're all bogged down. They're all like they all have their own multi-layered projects they're working on. So I don't know. I feel that it opens up a big hole for a lot of major flaws. And we'll see in this next generation of MMOs in particular. But I feel we're seeing that also in a lot of single player games or group player games, like when Anthem and things like that come out. You're not seeing the depth of a game that should be there. They're trying to streamline their teams too much, and so there's not enough content built into the games. They're trying to move into procedural generation. Let's write code to create a game. Well, you still need designers and you still need people like that to walk in there and do that. And a lot of artists, that's not what they do. They create objects, they do rigging, they put skins on models, they do all these important things, but they don't also have time on their plate often to be world builders and placing all of that content in their world and things like that. So the actual like scope of the designer seems to have been like the actual story driving, designers seem to be kind of lost in the industry from what I've seen. And I feel that that's while it's trimming cost, it's also trimming quality.
So, bringing us back to the alpha beta thing, at what point? So, we've gotten through the technical alpha, that kind of stuff has happened. What's next? Is it the
Um,
alpha that we're used to as the, I guess, the consumer end of things?
so this is where we start to run into the weird problem. ArcAge launched themselves originally here in America as an alpha. Um, sure, it was basically to test server stability, things like that, but that alpha ran about a year, and that's kind of crazy. Um, it was really a beta because it was a playable game. To me, an alpha should be technically playable, but you should be running into a lot of broken stuff. In reality, what alpha was for ArcAge was a beta, and their beta was a advertisement,
And if we
which
look in
moves
terms of CU, which a lot of people here know and get on to what they've got out now, 10 years ago, we probably would have considered this very heavily an alpha, not the beta that they're calling it.
right. And this is really this is almost a technical alpha. We're the first true thing that makes it feel like even an alpha test is going to be this new scenario. Everything else has been not really done. I mean, you don't really get in there, and there's not hyper customization for your character. I mean, basically, like 90% of the things that you're gonna want to experience when you log into that game on launch day aren't in that game. They've been still hyper focusing um, on its engine and how a few pieces are interacting with that engine, and therefore they're really in a technical alpha. They can say whatever they want, but I can't. I don't agree with them. Put it that way.
So we're in an alpha now. Let's talk about inviting people into an alpha. Typically, this is done through a selective thing, whether it's done randomly or whether it's very pointed. What are the pros and cons of doing random invitations versus being very selective in who you do? And should you have a truck ton of people, or like what are the parameters as to who you would bring into an alpha? As he hacks on a hairball, and I mean, if we see a lung coming
As
out, this
as,
is not going to be good.
as I die from COVID right here. A little bit of whiskey went down the wrong tube. Sorry. All right. But to kind of answer that question in alpha, so usually what a lot of companies have done in the last 20 years is they do a lot of what's called friends and family. Um, People that know are connected with devs, maybe a couple people that win some awards. Um, those are the types of people that you get in there because they're also connected with your development team, and therefore they're on a better automatic communication level with a dev, if not all the devs. Um, and therefore, it is easier to teach you how to quickly do feedback so that you can be of the most value. That doesn't mean that they don't want you just pretty much running around and just playing the game for the most part, but that is as soon as they start opening up an alpha to actual players running around, that's usually what they do. Um, Now, again, here we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, games are selling you the privilege of coming to their broken game that is hollowed out and there's nothing there. But luckily, you paid for the privilege. And if you are not into the whole depth of that experience and you don't want to be at work, uh, it's not worth paying that extra money to get into that alpha access.
So, what's
Um,
more beneficial to the studio? Is it having 100 alpha testers that have paid for the privilege so you have the extra money that you can sink into the game, or say having 50 alpha testers that haven't paid a dime but are experienced alpha testers and that the feedback they can give you is something that's usable?
To me personally, I would want experience and better communication than just people stumbling around. That being said, from this all becomes a studio specific question. do you believe in your metrics or do you not? Like, how much do you put faith in your heat maps and all of the other stuff? And when I see heat maps, metrics, all that stuff, is they just run software and they watch where do characters die most often? Where do characters go most often? Where do quests in people's logs stop? Like, oh, this one keeps stopping. Everybody seems to just drop this quest or whatever like that. Hey, maybe there's a problem with that quest. Let's go check it out. And then from a development standpoint, they can use that data to find that stuff. If you have faith in that and you have devs that are interested in chasing those rabbits to figure out why those things are happening without much communication from their players, by all means, throw them charge people money and make them run around in circles and hope for the best. So I mean, it's I got a 6-1, half dozen the other of how much you believe in your metrics and how much you believe in your dev team to find the problems.
So, but I guess worst case is if you've got people in there that run around because, yay, I'm in an alpha, da, 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 but they never say one thing in the bug area. They never make one comment. They never give one piece of feedback. Those kind of people in alpha testing and even beta testing for that matter are pretty useless. Is that fair to say?
Well, like I said, it's as long as they're playing the game, they're at least generating metrics, and metrics has value. I'm not gonna poop on the idea of metrics. I think that metrics just needs to go hand in hand with better communication. So I think it's a both, not a one or the other. And I feel that that's where they're trying to cut costs is on that idea that they're going to try to get away with saving money by only picking one as opposed to using both. I mean, I'm gonna put this out there immediately. I'm not a producer. I don't own a game company or anything like that. So my experiences are only personal, and I can't say from the actual logbook of money how that's playing out. You know,
So
because are they really making enough money for it to matter?
who knows?
Well, because what you're doing is, so I'll charge you a few bucks more to pick up a limited product, and it just means a product you won't be buying at release. You're still going to buy it. Like, it's a big chunk of that money, a big chunk of that value is just being pre-purchased. It's not like it's extra money. Sure, I might buy like, oh, you could buy the normal game for $69 or buy the like exclusive, get into this and get a pretty graphics book or whatever like that for 125. Okay, you know, so you can make a little extra money on it, but it's only a limited amount of players, and you know, what does that really get you?
So we have a question in chat from Skippy. Don't they do a separate test for server load, or would that be? It sounds kind of more like a technical alpha to me, but I
Server
don't know.
server loading happens many times over the course of development. You actually see it very often in beta tests because they have the most access to people. So there's a bunch of ways to do server load testing. The one that you'll see a lot from Camelot and Chain from and whatnot is they create a bunch of bots. Now they're using a program to create outside connections and to log into the server and everything like that to create these bots so that they are unique items and they're not just mobs spawning off the server. But that's kind of the angle they go, and you start that way, and that's a lot of companies do that. And then later on, you go in and you get as many players as possible to pile on a server for everybody for this 3 hours. Just get on the server, go, 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 and have as many people smash into those login servers and to play servers and all that type of stuff. What do we got? I see you smiling.
I've got Wolf and I've got Skippy who are taunting me in chat, so I'm
Oh,
ignoring them.
okay. Mm.
Talking about that lovely founder title in SWTOR.
But if you offer you that founder title,
Fine, I'll engage. Skippy, you want a sense of accomplishment? You got to get the legendary player icon that goes next to your game. That, my friend, is an accomplishment. A founder title is not an accomplishment. That is just saying, I am old enough to be there at the release of a game and not have any life. Thank you very much. Malice is all excited about his Jameson. He had to hold it up, so I said, okay, I'm going to one-up you. My bottle's bigger. This is not a paid advertisement for Jameson.
but Jameson, if you ever decide you want to pay us to advertise, I'll have a wall of Jameson bottles.
All right, so alpha testing is done. People have gotten in. There seems to be kind of now a lot of conversation in different communities as to whether or not progress and whatnot between alpha and beta testing gets wiped. A lot of people seem to think that, okay, alpha's done, boom, beta starts. From what I recall from old games, and again, I am no expert in this, you obviously know more than this stuff than I do, isn't there typically a pretty lengthy break between an alpha and a beta test?
Well, I mean, there is definitely a lot of you usually have a downtime, usually a month or so, if not more. That's there specifically for the purpose of going, okay, well, we learned all of this information. Let's break all of these metrics down. Let's break down all of anything that we haven't completed yet. Because so if you have an alpha test and the servers are up, they can't do a lot of major changes. They're doing quest fixes. They're doing little things like that. But like, we'll say we got a ton of feedback on how the crafting system blows ass. It's just like unwieldy, or it is obviously overpowered in a way. Okay, well, we need to redevelop this. So they're going to bring down alpha testing usually, or alpha testing will go in phases. They'll rip it out completely. They'll put in a new one. They'll test it, rinse, repeat. And now when they've got it tweaked down to pretty close to where they want to be, they're going to basically do the same thing in beta. They're going to rip it out. They'll slam it back in. All right, this should be good. Now we move into beta. But those downtimes take time. You're redesigning whole systems for a game.
Thanks for the follow, Goro.
Yeah, thank you very much. Weirdo. My co-host is a weirdo. It's what he does. Why is that is weird. I feel like I was failing our own community here for my Twitch stopped running. So I'm not even watching my own show.
Malice just likes to watch himself talk. That's all it is.
It's pretty much it. I mean, I'm big into that. I know what was the problem. I went to go turn off sound at one point, and apparently I turned off the video instead.
So Goro has a question, not 100% related, but we'll go with it. What is your earliest MMO?
My earliest MMO was... Does it have to be a graphic MMO?
I don't know that MUDs count.
Yeah, I mean, I played Muds and Mushes. But my first fully 3D MMO was Asheron's Call.
See, my first was actually Dark Age Camelot, but then I played Asheron's Call after. So, I mean, my stuff is kind of out of order. But yeah, what got me into gaming was actually Dark Age Camelot.
Full 3D was EverQuest. Yeah, Asheron's Call and EverQuest were the first kind of neck and neck full 3D ones after Meridian 19 and UO kind of came out. UO was huge in the market, but people wanted something fully 3D graphics, and so we got those. And now you look back at them and you're like, what the hell did I play? I thought that was such a cool looking game. It basically just looks like polygons slammed together. Like, It's amazing the theater of the mind that we all play in our history of gaming. Like, I mean, I my first PC game that I owned my own PC. I played it. It was a purchase game. It was awesome. It wasn't just some like because we played a lot of the D&D and whatnot. RPG games or the Laser Suit Larry games and a lot of those other games back in the day. But the first like game outside of that where I picked up a game and I was like, this was awesome was XCOM. And man, you like look back at that and you're like, wow, that's just some pixels shooting at each other. But I remember just totally getting into that game and being like, oh man, this is so realistic looking. It's so awesome. And it's like it's that theater of the mind, that trick that those games at the time like lure you into. They're like, hey, if I put a color here and I put a color here, now all of a sudden that looks like this, and you're like, yeah, that's amazing looking. So Astronaut's Call really fit that bill. I saw a recent picture of some gameplay from Astronaut's Call, and I was just like, really? I played that game like for years. But fantastic game nonetheless. I didn't get into UO honestly because, and it's the same reason why I don't get into certain games at all. Is I'm not into the idea of the complete full loot PvP. And I don't like games that are, I don't want to say exploiting, but like have no way of countering certain behaviors. Like a big thing in UO is people would get stealth and they would sit next to your door and they'd wait for you to open your door to your house, which you had a single key and you own the key. You could open the door and then they would go and walk into the house behind you before you physically close the door. Then they could pickpocket the key out of you, and now they owned your house.
Working as intended, right?
That is not something that, like, I just worked on my stealth skill. What do I need money for? I'll just take your stuff. Wow.
See, he says you can only blame yourself. You should have cast stealth detection before you opened your door.
Yep.
I mean, it's easy. It's right there. Okay, so back to our topic. We've gone through a technical alpha. We've gone through an alpha. We've brought servers down to kind of do the major fixes. We are now in, at least
Early
back
beta.
in the day, what we would call an early beta, or, you know, all the terminologies have changed. Camelot Unchained is saying, oh, beta 1, beta 2, beta 3. No, okay, whatever. It's the early beta. What does that look like? What's the point?
I'm kind of using terms for the that people are used to hearing. You'll get a lot of the alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2 internally. But this is kind of more of what the players in general experience. In a beta should be a playable game. Period. You should be able to run around and play that game. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be systems that may change, and there's not like combat and things like that may evolve, but you should be playing a playable game. If it's in beta, you should be able to walk into the game and play it. And that is the problem I have currently with CU.
Okay,
with
but
them
define playable.
Like,
to
it's
what
a game.
Extent?
No, it's a game. Like,
so you can log in, there's an objective, and you can complete the objective?
All your quests should be installed in the game already. Okay. I mean, again, you may be expanding on that, but theoretically, a player should be able to. Now, a lot of betas will restrict you so that, like, we'll say there's 50 levels, right? And they'll say, we just want you to test the first 20 levels. And they'll cap you, and they'll cap the zones because they're trying to still focus test you. But all that content for those first 20 levels then should be there. They may still be working on some like high-end dungeons and other contents, but all of the things that you should experience in gameplay should be there.
So when we say playable game, we're talking within the scope of the original design of the game.
theoretically you could slap $50, $60, $70 on the table and go, cool, we can play this. Let's do it. It might be buggy, it might be whatever, but it is a playable game. You should be able to log in and enjoy the experience. I mean, again, don't get me wrong, you're probably going to have some graphical glitches here and there, but honestly, I haven't seen a release game that hasn't had graphical glitches at this point.
Or random disconnects from the server. Anthem.
Right, So a lot of other weird problems that go on in the in games, but yeah, you should be playing that game. Now, like I mentioned, and especially in closed betas and early betas, you're talking about there will be limited events. This is also one of the times you'll start seeing everyone who is in closed beta, we need you to log in on Friday or whatever like that, because we're going to do server load testing, different things like that. These are all and these are things that you people buy into. This is the level where, to me, it's more comfortable. I don't feel like you're screwing your customer base to feel that they're getting that early involvement, because they can still give you feedback and things like that. The crafting system is still garbage, or this combat system feels slow and clunky, and they can start giving you some feedback, and you can start doing tweaks if you want. If that's not, sometimes, it is a game's goal to have a slow and clunky combat system. I mean, or that's the model in their brain of how they want it to work. So, but at least you're getting feedback, and those are people who can at least buy into that in their collector's editions and stuff like that. And people that are throwing collector's edition money usually are willing to put a little bit of effort into it. They're going to at least show up. They may not be writing bug reports, and they may not be writing bug reports well if they do write bug reports, but they're at least being a good source of metrics at that point. And there's enough players on the field playing to generate those metrics. So those metrics feel more within the scope of what a live game should be doing.
So we look at Camelot Unchained, that's got, as they've said, 3 beta periods. Beta 1, Beta 2, Beta 3. And then I guess technically a 4th, because then you would have, an open beta after that. What is the point of having that many betas? Is this mainly just to kind of appease a community of your game, or is there an actual logistical purpose within development for this kind of thing?
I mean, from their outlook, and in many studios' outlooks, they have their benchmarks. They're trying to hit X amount of success on certain things, and there may be multiple different things. So, let's say their beta 1 is all about server stability. They want to make sure that everybody's doing quests, everybody's killing mobs, everybody's running around in the game, all this other stuff, without any particular interruption in server stability. They may also do a big test to see if the servers crash, but in general, they're just saying if common play will crash the game. Now you move into like beta 2, and now, so what you'll also find in this is that people give feedback, right? Well, sometimes not all feedback is warranted, and this is a big. Sometimes I get it's a double-edged sword. There's a lack of communication from game devs, often what they're looking for. But on the other hand, if they tell you what they're looking for, sometimes it skews the data. So, it depends on really what you're chasing. But your beta 2 may be, hey, we've now pushed what we think is going to be the final crafting system or the final combat system, whatever like that. And now they're ignoring server stability stuff, and they're focusing on these tasks. And now they're looking at metrics to do this, because you can't look at metrics for everything, because if you look at metrics for everything, you get overwhelmed. So they kind of try to focus down into certain categories through those beta waves. And that's what I assume CU is doing, is you got your beta 1. They're really looking for the true serviceability. Can we get enough players in one zone beating on a castle to successfully hold the game together? And from there, you can spawn off on a lot of other ideas. I mean, CU gets to kind of cheat in that the most of the content. So we're probably never going to beta test, or if we do, it will be an open beta. Things like the depths. Those are the hidden cookies, the candy that will be. This is why you want to buy the game live. But other than
Or
that,
crafting at this point in time. I mean, come on.
right? See, that's where I don't understand how we can call it a beta. The game's core, as far as I have determined from everything I've read, the way the game plays, the design documents for this game, I almost feel that there should be the most amazing crafting system already written before they're even building an engine. Like,
well, it's written. It's just up here in MJ's head.
Right, but until it's in game, it's a meaningless gobbledygook. So the fact that we're in anything that's called beta without at least a working concept of their crafting system and not having the crafting class in.
Well, I mean, you can refine materials, you can put down the bench, you can open the bench up and see a basic interface. Where do you draw your line?
Well, you've basically just described every game on the market.
Okay.
But if you're selling your game as this awesome in-depth crafting system, now MJ will probably argue with me on this, and he has somewhat a valid point on this. I just feel that there is.
You're not supposed to concede before you place your argument there, Malice.
No. There is a rationale. I'm just about to counter that rationale, which is that I believe the industry isn't where it used to be. So we ran into this problem in Warhammer. World of Warcraft was basically just on the far side, just going over its peak. So it had peaked, it was coming down. So it was Blizzard was doing everything in their power for every new game that was coming out. And at that time, new games were coming out every 3 months. You had MMOs that would just fall. It was raining MMOs at that particular time. Everything was a WoW clone. Everything lasted about 6 weeks and then collapsed in on itself. And Blizzard, in their grand intelligence, ran through their opponents and applied for all their alpha slots and all their beta slots and ran their teams through those games and scoured out all the useful data they could out of those games. And then Warhammer launches. But what does WoW do weeks before, almost less than a month before Warhammer launches? They launched their new mega patch that installed public quests and a bestiary and a guild system and all of the things that Warhammer was bringing to the table. And then Warhammer launches. So I can understand that there is probably a deep paranoia in MJ's chest on this of going, I want to hold all my cards as close to my chest as possible. Problem is the market's no longer that market. I mean, Blizzard could steal all your stuff and it wouldn't change anything because WoW is, you're either a lifer WoW player or you're not.
I'm looking at you, Chris.
Yeah, get a hobby from your hobby, bro.
Okay, so one more state of game testing and whatnot before release, and we see this particular thing with like what we talked about last week with the Oasis pre-release.
So the pre-release, which is also often known as open beta. Pre-release is a sales term for we're not going to do an open beta. We're just going to sell you a game and hope for the best.
Your last
but
Hail Mary.
But since we didn't call it a release, we legally aren't hanging ourselves. Last Oasis is a perfect example of this, though. The first day of their release, we were actually really impressed. It was an amazing release. We had a server crash once, immediately got back in. Everything else seemed to be working really well in the game. And then they decided to fix something. That's active fixing something.
All went wrong.
Basically permanently broke their game. To the point that after 3 days, they could not repair a major feature in the game and had to bring the servers down, and will be down for at least a week, and are offering refunds for even their early access price. So make sure you do major changes in a test environment before you push them live. This is the true lesson of Last Oasis.
So we've
kind of flaw. It's a feature.
So we've kind of run through all the different stages of game development, at least from the viewpoint of the consumer and whatnot. A lot of what we've run through is what you would consider a standard progression based on kind of the old school games. Now we've got Kickstarter games. We've got a completely new way of communicating. We've got social media involved, so the level of transparency needs to be completely different from what it was. How does that affect the development of the game? And should games be being developed much differently now because of all this stuff that's going on than they have been in the past? And if so, is that an issue that we haven't switched to whatever that new way might be? Is that what's maybe causing all the issues with these games? A lot of questions, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's one thing that when we got around the 5-year mark with the CU, I was actually still very much a defender of their model, because let's be real, 4 to 5 years for a development cycle is pretty normal. You, as a consumer, find out about the game 3 years after it started development.
New World.
Yeah, you just didn't ever hear of this. It was in a lab somewhere being produced in a small studio, knocked out, and now all of a sudden they're finally like, all right, we can and games like that are usually under big banners like EA or somebody like that. Or THQ, or NCSoft or somebody like that, where they have all the funding they need given to them. They don't need to find particular investors or anything like that. They have a constant stream of revenue to create their product, and they're given their timelines by their corporate masters. And so they work out these projects, and then all of a sudden they're like, hi, we actually have a game that's playable enough. Now we can actually advertise this enough that we could show you some gameplay, that we could show you this, that, and the other thing. So it didn't shock me when you had your Kickstarter projects moving into the 5-year mark, because that made sense. Those first 3 years, you just weren't supposed to see in the first place. So waiting 2 to 3 years for a game that was announced, okay. So like, see you moving into the 6-year realm. All right, cool. That's 3 years after the 3-year gap. Okay. Once you move into 7 years and stuff like that, it hurts because you've watched it from day one. If you chopped off 3 years, it wouldn't be as bad, but still, it's what we would like 20 years ago. We'd be like, oh my God, that game has been delayed like several years. And fans out there know, if you've ever played in the old MMO space, you had products like Shadowbane, which got pushed back 3 years and was 3 years of ancient technology by the time it launched. So it looked good when they were talking about it, when they're like, yeah, it's going to launch next year. And then 3 years later, when they finally get it on the market, it's still buggy, it's still garbage, and it looks like it's a 3-year-old game now. And people are a little bit more acceptant these days of in the MMO space of games looking a little dated. But yeah, this became a huge problem back in the MMO space. In the early 2000s, you had AO, a lot of other random products that came out that would get delayed and delayed, or they would refuse to delay because it was a death knell to their company, and then they'd put out a product that they couldn't even maintain people logging into their game, like AO. AO took what 3 months before the servers were stable enough to actually like play.
So, do you think that the bane of all evil, which is social media, I think it's horrible and it ruins everything under the planet, my opinion. Do you feel that that has a positive or negative impact upon the development of these games in dealing with your constituency?
um, I think that it can kill you or it can be your best friend. I believe that products like I'm going to give Star Citizen an amazing pass on this. For as long as their development time has been, for all the other concerns that people have with that game, they have been constantly, repetitively, full PR, market hard through social media. They have put out their own YouTube shows, and they've put out like streaming content, and they've done all these things that like is almost a company in itself selling you Star Citizen. It's been amazing, and because of that, you always know what's going on in Star Citizen. The only reason you don't know what's going on in Star Citizen is you've made an active decision to not follow the information coming out of Star Citizen. I mean, the transparency is amazing. Camelot Unchained, on the exact flip side, is a well of secrets in a land of social media. They feed us little dribs and drabs, and the only time that we ever hear anything is like MJ doing one of his monologues, but and that's all great and all, but it's a lot of telling us what'll be in this game without ever showing us what's going to be in this game. Whereas like Star Citizen's like, we have this thing and we're going to totally put it in the game. And here's a total example of it in flight, flying through space and doing everything. It's hard.
Okay, but there's one more. Because
Okay.
you've got Star Citizen on one thing, you've got CU, which I would put kind of in the middle, and then you've got another one. Look at New World. Basically, there's nothing there. I mean, they've done 2 or 3 dev journals to put out a little bit of information, but I mean, they are almost completely dead silent on anything that has to do with their game.
Well, and that is the power of money. That is the infinite power of money. When you have a Jeff Bezos who is like, I scratched my ass and a few billion fell off, because it was stuck to my toilet paper. Anybody want to start a game with this? I don't know. Sounds fun. When you can just start that way, you don't need anybody else. All other humans are irrelevant shitbags who have no business giving their opinions about what you want to magically make.
If this stream gets banned because of your horrible impression of Bezos,
if you want me to talk nice about you, Bezos, there's an easy way to do that. 300 million. So I can, and I'll build a product under your studio so you can get profit off of this. You just give me 300 million to build a game. You will be a happy man. And I will be like, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir, you're the greatest man. I love rich people, sir. Until then, screw you. Anyway, but at the end of the day, they don't need it. The mystery is what's selling that game right now. Let people imagine that game. You're talking about basically someone who's has an infinite amount of resources. So they're going to create their first game. Well, with an infinite amount of resources, hopefully he hired some talent. Otherwise, he's a moron. And we're pretty sure he's not a moron. Otherwise, he wouldn't have infinite resources. So he hired some talent, and he's creating a game with infinite resources. On top of that, Amazon has done all of these things to create engines and networking and all this other cloud computing and all this other grand, powerful things behind the scenes going, oh, and they're going to have access to all of that? And they're going to have access to everything else? Oh, God, this game is going to be awesome. Literally, it could give you garbage with a basically heaping pile of like poop whip topping on top. And you'd be like, I'm totally buying that game. And then like you're going to find out that it was just like literally it's 3 hours of gameplay and you quit. And he may just make a lot of money off of you because he's going to refuse refunds and lol because I'm Jeff Bezos. But if you're not a cynic like me, and I'm a horrible, horrible cynic, it to everybody else is a dream. It is everything that you want, and they just flash just enough candy out there that you're like, oh, this is going to be so awesome. The cinematics are gorgeous. The combat looks neat as hell. Glowing eyes and evil corruption and invading a land of prosper and blah. And it sounds so neat. And it's finally that survival game that you just really hated the survival genre. But man, Amazon's launching it. So it's going to be great. So the less they tell you about it, the more likely you are to buy that game.
So it sounds like the two extremes of the social media interaction have their benefit, and then if you're stuck in the middle, if you do it poorly, sucks to be you.
Right. I mean, honestly, if you don't have the infinite resources you have, especially if you use a Kickstarter model. Now, again, EA doesn't need to talk to you. EA has resources. They can build a product without saying a damn thing for 2 years before they even decide, should we keep producing this? Nah, let's take the project. Or Blizzard doing the same thing with like, we're going to create Titan. Titan will be a great freaking idea. Titan? What's Titan? Oh, we forgot all about that. Someone lost it and moved on. And then they're like, oh, the market's shifted. Group shooter, match shooters are like the big thing. Oh, well, let's take the art assets that we made for Titan and we're going to slam them into a group shooter. Let's launch Overwatch. Yeah, that's a great business idea. Yeah, let's do that. I mean, that's a great thing about having a lot of money. But if you don't have a lot of money, you need to be a man of the people. You have to be a Bernie Sanders of the game industry. You have to go, I love you all. Everybody give me $1. Instead of going, I have corporate backing. I am God. Ha, ha, ha. You know, I mean, it matters. It matters what your revenue stream is how social media interacts with you. Because you could say the power of social media and how it could rise and smash businesses. And then you would look at EA and you go, how has social media not destroyed this ball of epic asshole filth? That's what EA stands for, epic asshole. Filth of the most corrupt, horrible business practices to ever be used on customers for any reason whatsoever.
Surprise mechanics.
I'm not surprised that they do not hack your computer the moment you log in and steal all of your fucking data. And that's what they're keeping in business on. Because holy crap, if it was somehow based on the steaming piles of shit they give us and call them games, who the fuck launches a game every 6 months where it takes 3 months for that game to become viable after it launched, after they charge you for the first 3 DLCs, or you had to buy the package deal or whatever like that, so you got the season pass, because what the season pass is, you get the rest of the game. Thanks for buying it. Ah, screw EA. EA is EA are evil.
But still good enough to end up on your shelf.
And that is the freaking endless nightmare, though. They put out steaming crap on the regular. They screw people. They steal their money. They do everything else. And then they're like, yay, but everyone will forgive us after 3 months once we fix it. And they're like, all right, it is a decent game.
Perfect example, Anthem. They still haven't fixed it, and yet it's an addictive, great. You get to fly around and blow shit up.
Well, their respectable answer is, we effed up Anthem so bad, we're not even going to try to fix it. We're just putting Anthem 2 out. We're going straight to Anthem 2 without even like slowing down. We're just going to redesign the whole thing. We're sorry. I mean, you had a bad launch when you're just like, we'd like to fix this, but they would take literally the dev time to make a whole new game. So we're just going to make a whole new game.
So I have a question for people in chat because I'm curious as to what they're thinking. So if you're out there in chat, so we've got 3 examples of how studios, dev companies, whatever you can call them, interact on social media when it comes to relaying information about the games that they're developing. Do you like the over communicating Star Citizen type people where it's just anything and everything blanketing social media? Do you like CU where it's just enough to kind of keep you interested, the little carrot on the stick that they dangle? Or do you like the idea that it's like, okay, yeah, we've got a game. Yep, you'll see it when it comes out. Not much at all.
And I'll say there's a third group. Rest its soul. Gotta do the whole like Catholic thing or whatever. I'm not Catholic, so just go to hell now.
You just offended someone.
Blasphemy or something. Yeah. Archdiocese is sending me a cease and desist right now. But Chronicles of Lyria, that was an amazing game idea. It is sad that kind of social media killed you, because you made some big blunders when honestly it wasn't a big deal. It was a good time to make big blunders. You were in the dev time for big blunders, and if you had funding, no one would have ever seen those big blunders, and no one would have ever questioned them. But unfortunately, they damaged your reputation, and because of that, social media tore you apart, and investors did not want to continue on with you. But I hope someone picks up their ideas and makes a game in that vein again in the future. God rest your soul.
So, again, to chat, what do you like best when it comes from the studios? Do you like a truck ton information? Do you like not very much information at all? Or do you like information that you're just like screaming at your screen because it's enough, but it's not enough and all that kind of stuff? Brutex says, I like one big write-up a month while in production or alpha/Berta.
Berta?
He meant to say beta, just,
No, I think he meant Bertha.
Bertha.
He likes large girls. There's nothing wrong with that.
He says, and then shush and work the rest of the time. Oh, he meant Berta.
Yeah, okay. Berta. Alberta. He could be from Canada, Kanukistan. I hate when the studio hypes their game too much. We see that often at E3 and like.
Swiper, I kind of like what Amazon is doing. You don't know about the game until it's close to launch. Call me old school. I'm with you, Swiper. I like, games going, hey, we got a game. It's like, ooh, I've got time to get excited about it, but then I don't have to sit for years waiting and going, okay, I totally got excited 2 years ago for this game. What the hell happened? I'd rather just be blindsided with the game, have just enough time to get hype about it, and then start playing.
While I agree, it also fights with my other side, which is I like the idea that we are seeing the new growth of independent studios to fill a space that uh, just realistically the big market is not interested in anymore.
Yeah.
They're redesigning the MMO space to be group play. They're not looking for MMOs anymore. It's all about um, limited group play, the Anthem style gameplay. Sure, there are a bunch of players, and you may stand in town and you may see a bunch of other players. But at the end of the day, you're a group of four. You're pretty much designed to hang out with your group of friends and not really MMO it, you know?
Come on, there's at least 13 of you in chat, and I've gotten answers from maybe 4 or 5. Come on, Narth. I know you're still listening. That's the negative side effects of a Kickstarter. You don't have nearly infinite resources to make your own game fast, so you have to rely on the lower budget.
Exactly,
Thus,
Bobo.
lower staff.
And therefore, they have to kind of play that hype card and they have to kind of keep that transparency going because people paid for it already. The game's paid for. Therefore, they have to keep their investors happy by giving them progress reports. You have to, like, people don't really think about it, but in a way, you're like a board member holding a large amount of stock. And you are being constantly given your updates by that company that you've invested in and to know that it's going in the direction you want.
So here's a question for you, Malice, and anybody in chat, you can chime in here as well. The game that has had the best development period that we as the consumer base has known about.
I honestly, for its success and for how quickly they fixed a lot of their core problems right out the gate, I'm actually going to give Dark Age of Camelot a big one on this. They dev that game in what 3 years, and they put it out, and it was the servers were rough the first week, but they fixed a lot of their problems for their server stability and stuff really quickly. Whereas I actually kind of sort of laugh at a lot of the World of Warcraft people who are like, "Oh, World of Warcraft, their launch was really rough," um, and I don't blame it. It's not like to me, it's not a lack on their part. I really think that no one ever anywhere could possibly have expected the zerg of players that swarmed World of Warcraft. They were just putting out new servers like every day. Oh, put out a new server. Oh, put out a new server. Oh, put out a new server. And they didn't even have time to fix their database. 3 months later, you're still trying to loot a mob and like get stuck in the kneeling position or sliding around the map for the next like until you relog, trying to hopefully get that loot. They had a really rough launch. Really, realistically, it was. There's nothing wrong with being rough in your first week or two. I kind of just expect that. There's so many unexpecteds that happen once you, which especially back then. Honestly, today I don't understand how anyone can have a rough launch. To me, I don't understand how EA can have a rough launch. EA corporate should be pulling the metrics for every single launch for every single game they've ever done and go, hey, did you check this? Did you check that? Did you make sure that was installed? Did you make sure you had a couple of overflow servers? Here's a couple bucks to do that. All right. Hey, look, you could do a good launch now. Congrats. I don't understand how they can't do a stable launch. It seems so literally the most insane concept at the level of product launches they've done. Right.
We've got a couple of people that like Final Fantasy XIV's launch. And Wolf is saying he thinks.
Are we talking about the game that was launched taken down, launched, taken down, and launched. Is that the game you like the launch of?
Pretty sure it was just taken down once, redesigned, and launched again.
Okay. you know. Um, yeah, I'm not gonna support Final Fantasy in this.
Warframe did great with fixing the game while you played it. You know, that game continually impresses me for what it is. You didn't pay for the game. You don't pay to play the game. You just pay for the in-game currency to get all the little this-its and that-its. They do a really good job updating. They do a really good job, trying to fix the stuff. And yeah, they've got lots of problems, but for what the game is, I think they do pretty well. I know Malice is kind of if on it, but
well, no. I support Warframe. I don't like the game all that much, but it's a play style thing. It's like currently everybody in my guild has dragged me into playing Albion Online. I hate click movement games. Just don't like them. It is the most inane way to play a game. And of course, I'm playing a caster. If I go to click on you, I auto attack you before I even get to cast any of my actual spells that matter. Like, it's horrible. I don't.
And yet you're playing it. Okay.
But I can appreciate the game mechanically. It has a good crafting system. Its advancement system is actually really cool. Its PvP system is really neat. I like how its systems work. Same with Warframe. Warframe is a very pretty game. Actually, I like it more now. I've played it recently. And I could see having fun with the game. But it's just kind of not my jam. But it has been... I am amazed at a product that's been around as long as it has, who is not like some big corporate shill product that really failed initially. As a product, it failed. And something that happens in the MMO space more than anything else is if you fail in that first year and you're failed, you almost never recover. Warframe's tenacity... Warframe's tenacity just muscled through it, and they keep putting out content to this day, and that is really amazing to me. I have to give them a lot of props for that tenacity and to really reinvent themselves and become a much more viable game. People are very much more interested in that product than they ever were before.
Narthesis, well, I guess knowing about a year from launch is good. Going back to our earlier question, I backed several Kickstarter games because I was sick of feeling ripped off by AAA titles under-delivering. But the hype dies with Kickstarter long before the launch, if they ever launch.
Which, poor Darth, he has invested in two said things.
Narth, so the lesson here is if you find out that Narth has invested in that Kickstarter, don't go.
Right, I didn't throw any money on it.
Brutex, the best launch I've seen in the last few years is MapleStory 2, and Black Desert was great other than day one.
Yeah, Black Desert actually launched really well. Just don't like the game, but cool. I can't argue with that. It did have... Like I said, if you can come out of your first week fixing your problems, I don't even... No one's ever even going to remember that first week. There'll be those few whiners who will rage quit. Yeah, it's not perfect on day one. Like, have you never played an MMO? Like, there's no such thing as the perfect day one MMO.
But it's the snowflake generation. It's got to be given to them perfect. So they don't have to, who wants to do work for this?
Personally, I think it should. I'm gonna argue tooth and nail that they should have a perfect launch. But if it's messed up for the first week and they fix all that stuff, rock on. Last Oasis, the fact you had to bring your servers down for a week is probably your death knell. But as long as you can fix all those problems in that week, you can recover from this because people will forget about it. I hope you reset all the servers too. I hope you just relaunch.
Well, it was a pre-launch, so technically they could wipe it, but neither here nor there.
Haha, you're a good man, Cress. I don't think anybody's ever said that before, Swiper.
The two of them both agree that Final Fantasy, even though it launched, was taken down, redesigned, and as Cress said, they hit the nail on the head when they did the redesign, which they did, and no one out in the gaming community and whatnot will ever dispute that.
But you got to put all the good with the bad in one lump, and the fact that they so effed up the first game that they had to redesign it.
But they pulled it off. I guess that's the conversation that we're having. Is they pulled it off successfully, out of a
yeah, well,
which is more than what most games are able to say.
Right, and to me, the only reason why that was true is because Square Enix
is a machine.
Well, it's a machine. They just do amazing work, and second of all, they couldn't afford to let that product fail.
Well, yeah, it's their bread and butter Final Fantasy. I mean, people were going to play that game regardless because it was Final Fantasy. It didn't matter if it was a steaming hot pile of shit or if it was, a shiny gold nugget.
Right. They needed to repolish that turd though and sell it no matter what. So
I know Swiper respect the fact that they did what they needed to do to have a good game, even though they failed miserably after initial launch.
Yeah, I like people to pull it off the first time, but whatever. I mean, is what it is. I mean, I've got a couple of guildies right now playing Final Fantasy, so I mean, I've watched them stream it on Discord. It looks pretty cool, but it is what it is. Elder Scrolls had a good launch. No. I played their beta, and I refused to play their launch because the beta was so garbage.
There you go. Apparently the answer is no, Brutex.
Yeah. Never played what?
Final Fantasy 14.
Oh, no. I did not play Final Fantasy 14.
You should at least give it a try.
I was not interested in their earlier products because, oh my god, 4 to 8 hour boss fights is not my thing.
Okay, to be fair to Final Fantasy, you can play an extremely healthy amount of that game without ever setting foot into a ridiculously long raid.
But I play with a competitive guild.
Wow. All respect from Crest is gone. Did you actually have any respect for Malice? I mean, you two just kind of...
Yeah. I'm not a huge... and this is from somebody who, from a single-player platform, played a lot of Final Fantasy. Yeah, I don't know. Just the MMO model never really struck me. Don't get me wrong, I heard lots of good things with Final Fantasy 14, even after it's like redo and relaunch. But by then, I was well entrenched in other games, and I'm kind of one of those people that once I get into a game that I like, I'm there for 4 years, and I'm not going to just bail it because some new. I don't chase the new shiny. So.
All right, Malice, what are you going to tap next week? MMO Grind.
All right. So here on the MMO Grind, we are going to actually have a guest. So tell your friends and family and that one other person you know. Because I'd like to get as many viewers out here as possible. I've got Jolene Goya from Blizzard Entertainment. She is an artist working on Diablo 4. Now, unfortunately, Diablo 4, as you can imagine, is under more NDA than probably the U.S. government uses top secret red tape. So
I don't
there's
know.
probably
They'd
not.
probably give New World a run for their money because you've got alpha testers in New World right now that if they even leak a little bit on a stream or anything like that, their stream is banned. They're banned from the game for life. I mean, it is ridiculous. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. So we're probably not going to hear a lot on any type of technical details of Diablo 4, but we're going to discuss her career, uh, about basically art, how it interacts with gaming, and how you can maybe understand when you make that argument. Well, they put out some new graphics and blah blah blah, but they should have fixed this bug. Understanding that these people are not that's not what these people do. They make your game pretty, uh, and they make the graphics amazing, and they put tons of hard work into rigging and modeling and making sure the characters flow well and not bug repairing a wall somewhere that is can be fixed by a dev.
And guys, seriously, try to get as many people on as you can for this to support these. Malice is doing an insane amount of work to get guests like this artist on from Blizzard Diablo 4. We've got some other guests down the pipeline, which I won't steal his thunder, that are some pretty big guests and some pretty high profile names that we'll be on and we'll talk to. And again, most of what we're doing is talking to them about who they are, their journey through the game sphere, why they like what they do, and what it's like to actually be in that kind of a role. So we're not really digging into stuff that, we can't, but you'll get to learn more about these people, which is pretty awesome.
But hopefully, the more that we support these people, the more we can get access maybe to the PR people that can give us some candy. Think of it as a long journey to find the hotness.
Other announcements. Tomorrow, Swiper, you are dropping State of the Realm. Yes, this is Swiper's monthly update on Camelot Unchained, where he usually takes the 5 top points of development that CSE has put out for their game and kind of digs into them a little bit. So if I recall correctly, that was going to hit in the morning, he told me. So look for that on YouTube. Just search for Swiper. Eventually, his videos will be transitioning over to the Smart Gamer Live YouTube channel, but for now it is still on his, so please go check it out. Hit subscribe, hit
Thanks
like,
for doing this,
hit the guy or help the guy out, hit the guy out. Also coming up this Friday, we will have another Into the Veil with myself, Malice, BowBow, hosted by Swiper, where we'll dive into one of the big points that CSE has put out in their development of Camelot Unchained. And we'll talk about that and see what we think and all that kind of good stuff. Boy, I got a lot of announcements today.
That's good.
Yeah. The next town hall, we'll be talking about social anxiety in gaming. This has kind of been a hot topic, interestingly enough, that has been all over several different Discord channels and other people that I communicate with, usually daily. So there'll be a number of us on talking about social anxiety in gaming. What is it? How do you deal with it? How do you cope? And how do you support people in your gaming group that have some social anxiety in gaming? This is a big problem for a lot of gamers. So tune in. That will be April 12, and that's again at 10 p.m. Eastern. That is a Sunday, the second Sunday of the month. The next one that we've got is check out our YouTube channel, Smart Gamer Live on YouTube. We do have some new videos hitting there. Please check them out. Hit subscribe if you have not. At least watch them through. They're informative. You want to learn about some different games. And also, everybody needs to send this guy over here a private message in Discord to tell him he needs to record his rant videos. We all love them. Everybody tells me that it would be awesome. People want to pay money for them. We're actually all set up, guys. We've got the intro recorded. We've got kind of a layout of how this is going to go. We just need this guy to sit down
It's
and
hard
record
to
it.
take a naturally triggered event and turn it into a show.
Oh, I'll get you triggered. Heck, we'll get Cress on beforehand to get you triggered if that's what you need. This is not going to be a problem, Malice. But, I think that's all of my my announcements. The big ones are support Swiper. Go check out his thing. Leave some comments, and again, that will be transitioning over to the Smart Gamer Live YouTube. You'll see some videos from BowBow coming up, some podcasts and whatnot, where BowBow kind of goes into some theory crafting and stuff that he does. You want a link to our stuff. Okay. I can probably get you the link while Malice talks.
Yeah, and definitely get out here next week. Show your support. Ask Jolene all kinds of questions. Her and I have known each other for a very long time. Actually, she was in my Ashran's Call Guild back in the day. So, yeah, we'll really get to kind of get the nitty gritty of her career and find out how much she knows or doesn't know about video gaming. Anything else for you, Zaylen?
I'm good. I finally got through all my.
You got everything? All right. Well, everybody, thanks for coming out. You all have a great day and or night, and drink well.